Have you heard about the world's youngest female self-made billionaire? Do you know that she was also involved in a massive scam? Meet Elizabeth Holmes. She dropped out of college at the age of 19 to make her own company. She called it Theranos. Theranos is a health technology company which goal is to revolutionize blood testing by developing testing methods that could use surprisingly small volumes of blood and also claim these tests could be performed very rapidly using small automated devices the company had developed. If Holmes were able to make such a promising company, how did she get involved in a massive fraud? In 2018, the US Securities and Exchange Commission charged Theranos and Holmes with deceiving investors by massive fraud through false or exaggerated claims about the accuracy of the company's blood testing technology. In June 2018, a federal grand jury indicted Holmes and former Theranos Chief Operating Officer Ramesh Sani Balwani on 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud for distributing blood tests with falsified results to consumers. The world's youngest self-made billionaire immediately became the world's most disappointing leader in a snap because of fraudulent actions. This is a kind of customer fraud. Fraud red flags. As we identify some types of fraud, auditors must have a sufficient knowledge to evaluate the transparency and correctness of the financial statements and other financial reports, source documents, and the internal control system in order for them to make recommendations and corrections. As auditors, how should we know if there is a case of potential fraud? The following are the usual red flags that the auditors should notice. Discrepancies in the accounting records, conflicting or missing evidence, problematic or unusual relationships between the auditor and the management, inadequate or non-transparent explanation for unusual transactions, variances, or results, large adjustments made after a period in complex transactions that are not auditable, creation of fictitious reconciling items, existence of concealment of documents, discovery of falsification of documents, and significant related party transactions just like the Enron case. Fraud prevention and detection. Although the auditors could identify if some financial transactions or information are fraudulent, the management is held responsible for managing fraud risk by preventing and detecting it. For fraud prevention, the CASA Control Framework has control elements for fraud prevention program. These elements are: first, the control environment, which includes a code of conduct, ethics policy and fraud policy, and a strong ethical culture. Second, a fraud risk assessment, which generally includes the following: identifying and prioritizing fraud risk factors and fraud schemes, mapping existing controls to potential fraud schemes and identifying gaps, testing operating effectiveness of fraud prevention and detection controls, documenting and reporting the fraud risk assessments. Third, control activities or the policies and procedures for business processes that include authority, limits, and segregation of duties. Fourth, fraud-related information and communication practices, which promote the fraud risk management program and the organization's position on risk. Fifth, monitoring, which evaluates anti-fraud controls through independent evaluation of the fraud risk management program and the use of it. Aside from the control elements according to CASA framework, there are other ways to prevent fraud. The first one is to create control assessment panel, which includes representatives that will draw up specifications. The second way of preventing fraud is to use standard contact documentations or any variations approved by the senior management. Third is to set evaluation criteria agreed by the contract panel prior to tendering. The fourth activity is to use contractual correspondence of the purchasing department, which could only be changed if approved by the senior management. The fifth prevention is to use contact management as a source document that will be traced for audit trail. The sixth one is to carry out claims negotiation by using professional advisors. The seventh way is to return the certification documents to the originator. The eighth method is to allow the sleeping of contracts only when authorized by the senior management. The ninth process is to review the reasonableness and competitiveness of prices. The last one is to review the list of suppliers by senior management. Fraud prevention can only raise the probability of limiting the fraud risk, so the organization must not fully rely on prevention techniques. The financial records, information, and statements should also review frequently in case there could be an instance of detecting fraud to strengthen the line of defense of the organization. Some ways of detecting fraud are the following. Internal and external audit. The internal audit activity must evaluate the potential for the occurrence of fraud and how the organization manages fraud risk, while the external auditor must perform procedure designed to detect fraud. Whistleblowing. It refers to the act of reporting wrongdoing or suspected wrongdoing outside of the normal chain of command. The organization may use a hotline or other means to guarantee confidentiality so that people may be encouraged to address their issues regarding the organization. Forensic auditing. It is the process of applying auditing skills to situations that have potential legal implications and/or consequences. Interrogation. It is a technique used by the auditors to seek for confirmation or confession.